Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe has resigned, Parliament Speaker Jacob Mudenda has said. A letter from Mr. Mugabe said that the decision was voluntary and that he had made it to allow a smooth transition of power. The surprise announcement halted an impeachment hearing that had begun against him. Lawmakers roared in jubilation and people have begun celebrating in the streets. Mr. Mugabe, 93, was until now the world's oldest leader. He had previously refused to resign despite last week's military takeover and days of protests. The letter did not mention who would take over from Mr. Mugabe. The constitution says it should be the current vice president, Felixilum Foko, a supporter of Grace Mugabe, Mr. Mugabe's wife. Mr. Mudenda said moves were underway to ensure a new leader could take over by late on Wednesday. UK Prime Minister Theresa May said Mr. Mugabe's resignation provides Zimbabwe with an opportunity to forge a new path free of the oppression that characterized his rule. She said that former colonial power Britain, as Zimbabwe's oldest friend, will do all it can to support free and fair elections and the rebuilding of the Zimbabwean economy. In other reaction, Robert Mugabe was in power since independence in 1980. He won elections, but over the past 15 years these were marred by violence against political opponents. He presided over a deepening economic crisis in Zimbabwe, where people are on average 15% poorer now than they were in 1980. However, Mr. Mugabe was not forced out after decades in power by a popular mass movement but rather as a result of political splits within his ZANU-PF party. His dismissal of Emerson Mnangagwa as vice president 2 weeks ago was seen by many as clearing the way for Grace Mugabe to succeed her husband as leader. It riled the military leadership, who stepped in and put Mr. Mugabe under house arrest. The leader of the influential Liberation War veterans, former allies of Mr. Mugabe, said after the army takeover that Mr. Mugabe was a dictator, who as he became old, surrendered his court to a gang of thieves around his wife. Yet despite huge demonstrations in the streets celebrating what seemed like his impending demise, Robert Mugabe had until now refused to step down. His decision to finally resign has sparked wild celebrations in the streets. "We are just so happy that things are finally going to change," Togo Ndlelambi, a hairdresser, told the AFP news agency. "I am the happiest person under the sun right now, because I always believed that Mugabe was going to step down in my lifetime and it has happened," human rights activist Linda Masarira told the BBC. "And now going forward it's time for the opposition to reorganize and ensure that we will have a government that cares for the people. And everyone has to be included."